China is gearing up for the next Cold War. President Trump opens up about Michael Cohen's arrest. Lastly, the First Lady calls out the mainstream media. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. Starting off today, I want to talk about China and what they're doing to prepare for the next Cold War. It is almost inevitable for it to take place, especially with the increased tensions between Canada and China, France and China, Germany and China, Great Britain and China, Japan, Australia, us. The list goes on and on and on. This has a lot to do with China's practices, pretty much everything to do with what China's doing. That is, infiltrating foreign companies, forcing foreign companies to give up their secrets if they want to do business within the country. They are imprisoning their own people, putting Muslims in concentration camps and torturing them until they separate themselves from their religion to strictly believe in nothing but communism because they are a secular state and don't believe in religion. You can't believe in religion and be a communist at the same time. That goes against everything that the ideology is. So all these things are increasing the tension between China and the Western world, and they see that. They know what they're doing. It's intentional. They want to try and take over the world, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. That is why they are in Africa. They are funding certain African countries and trying to help them and bring them into the developed world. This isn't something out of goodwill. This is a Machiavellian move to further their reach and further their power across the globe. They currently, the countries that they fund in Africa, entice them to vote for them in the UN, and if they do so, they'll give them money. If they don't, they'll give them less money or no money. They're also indebting a lot of these countries, which means they have a lot of leverage over the African continent and, well, the countries that they are helping out in Africa, that is. Russia does the same thing. China's not unique in that regard. Russia does the same thing by enticing certain African countries to vote for them in the UN in return for weapons. So two authoritarian regimes are doing this in Africa, although the main one to be concerned with is China, because they are not just spreading their reach within the African continent, they are entering the United States as well in our universities. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is something where a bill has been written to try and prevent this from happening again and limiting funding to or from Confucius institutions to universities, because it was found that these Confucius institutions were being funded by the Chinese government, and those giving lectures in the Confucian institutions were vetted by the Chinese government. When you hear their lectures, they're whitewashing Chinese history, they're whitewashing communism, and just reconstructing, the past, which sounds like somebody, a party we know in the United States that does that all the time. They never admit to being the party of slavery, never admit to making the KKK. They completely convolute history at every step because history goes against what they do. It's true. So this is hitting right at home. This isn't something you have to go overseas to notice. This is being right here in our universities. Kids are being indoctrinated. This is cultural Marxism. You want to know where political correctness comes from? It's this. It's exactly this. What the communistic regime wants to do is enforce a certain way of thinking to enforce their beliefs upon everybody else and try and, first off, belittle, then quite literally kill off anybody else who disagrees with them. That's exactly what their goal is to spread communism across the world. And we're seeing this right at home. So we have to be very aware of this. There's also Congress members who are stating, like Representative Ted Lieu from California, he said yesterday that he would love to regulate speech, but the First Amendment won't allow him to do that. Literally stating that if he could, he would censor those who disagree with him, but the First Amendment doesn't allow him to do that. Why do we want people like that in office? That's scary. That shows that he doesn't care about his state or his country. He just cares about power. There are so many other people on the left who do the same thing, who claim they're for free speech but want to regulate hate speech. I've already talked about this numerous times. You can't actually define hate speech because it's subjective. What offends you may not offend me. What's hateful to you may not be hateful to me. Therefore, there's no objective way to define it, and you can't touch hate speech because there is no such thing. It's just free speech. Unless somebody's calling for violence, then you can say whatever you wish. I'm bringing this up because this is part and parcel of the Marxist ideology, the communist ideology that China is trying to spread throughout the world. We have to be very aware of this. This is scary, scary stuff. And they know exactly what they're doing. It's not as if this is happening by accident. This is by design. This has been going on for years. I mean, for instance, they were hacking the Marriott for 4 years. They hacked the data breach for 4 years, collecting and stealing 500 million customers' information. One of the largest data breaches in history. This news came out a couple weeks ago. I covered it in a prior episode. And they found out that it's the Chinese government. China is trying to persuade the American mindset to despise our culture at every turn and not appreciate where we come from and show no gratitude for those who have fought to defend our Constitution. That's what they're doing. That's why we see so many young people, so many people my age, who say things like we shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving, we shouldn't celebrate Columbus Day, it should be Indigenous Peoples Day. We are tearing down statues and monuments. I understand that they were erected in the 1960s. I understand that there are people who are racist. I get it. But I think President Trump made a very good point when he said, when will we stop destroying monuments if we start for the Confederate statues? That's the most easy and appealing thing to attack because obviously nobody in their right mind defends what they were fighting for. What they were fighting for is slavery, and nobody today is going to support that. And if they do, then either they have horrible parents or they are so far off the wagon that they can't be saved and you just ostracize them from society. You don't even need to do that because they do it themselves, because 99% of the people in America don't want anything to do with people who are racist. That's just the truth. Although, in today's society, they would make you seem as if racism hasn't left. It is always and forever will be until we tear down this oppressive regime known as the American government present in our everyday society. This is so wrong. This is part of what the communists are trying to do to our country. I don't know why nobody's talking about this. Well, I kind of do. The mainstream media is ran by predominant left-wing people and organizations. Therefore, they're not going to go against what they actually want. And yeah, they really do want this. Not once did anybody bring up the fact that China has implemented or talked about a good censor here in America during the congressional hearing against with the CEO of Google. They talked about Dragonfly, yet they just take his word for it, although it has been implemented for a while now and just reached out to the public. He denies that they even acted on the Dragonfly initiative. For those of you who don't know what Dragonfly is, it's a search engine they implemented in China to censor, which they're trying to bring over to America. And nobody's talking about that. It's very, very upsetting. So we have to be aware of what's going on. China is quite literally trying to destroy everything this country has worked for. Everything we have done to get to where we are today, they are trying to destroy and take over. That's what's going on. So be awake. Be mindful when you hear people talk about hate speech. Be mindful when you hear young people say we shouldn't celebrate Thanksgiving. Say we should have Indigenous People Day instead of Christopher Columbus Day. Nobody wants to talk about this. Christopher Columbus adopted a Native American because his dad was friends with Christopher Columbus. When his dad died, Christopher Columbus adopted him. He obviously wasn't all that great. But who is? Literally, who is? Can you name one person who is a saint? Actually a saint. You can't, because they don't exist. Everybody has some bad things about them, and everybody has done bad things. Some worse than others. We have to be aware that history is being distorted, and it's being distorted by people who don't care about you. They want to have control over you. That's what's going on. So when you hear this revisionist history, stand up to it. Say something about it. And if you don't know anything about it, do your own research. Don't buy in to what they tell you at school 110%. Take some of it. Some of it's truthful. A lot of it is reconstructed to fit a narrative. Be mindful of that. And be mindful of what China's doing. So I want to switch over to what President Trump had to say regarding Michael Cohen's arrest. This is an article from CNN, and this is something he tweeted out earlier today, and it is the following. I never directed Michael Cohen to break the law. He was a lawyer, and he's supposed to know the law, Trump tweeted. It's called advice of counsel, and a lawyer has great liability if a mistake is made. I never directed him to do anything wrong. Whatever he did on his own. He's a lawyer. A lawyer who represents a client is supposed to do the right thing. That's why you pay them a lot of money. What he's referring to is one of the charges Michael Cohen has against him, which is campaign finance violation. This is the only thing that President Trump has been implicated in, along with his Michael Cohen's other felonies. That's the only thing. And all this information got dug up through the Russia investigation. You know, the one that was trying to find out if there was any Trump-Russia collusion. Still no evidence. Still waiting for any kind of real linkage between the two. Can't find it. But, you know, we worry about campaign finance laws, tax evasion, and lying to Congress. Not saying he shouldn't go to jail for those things. I'm just saying that they have nothing to do with Russia. Anyway, President Trump tweeted this out, and I don't think he said anything wrong here, and I'm sure maybe his lawyer told him to say, I never directed Michael Cohen to break the law, because more than likely, he never directed Michael Cohen to break the law. On technical terms, I guarantee you President Trump never stated to Michael Cohen once, go break the law. Why would he do that? He would never do that. So this is just a technicality President Trump is trying to use. I think it is a smart one. And you know what? I have to add this. We're only talking about this because the mainstream media and Democrats realize there's nothing on Russia. Do you think, honestly, if there was anything on Russia and Trump, we would be talking about campaign finance violations? Do you really think that? No. This is a witch hunt. Once again, I've said it so many times over the course of this week and last week, because the more evidence we see, it just proves there's no Russia collusion. None. It's been going on for 2 years. And we're talking about campaign finance violation. Something President Obama did, it was just fined. I mean, come on. Now we want to talk about impeaching President Trump about this? And we're talking about his tweets regarding him never directing Michael Cohen to break the law? Come on, man. We have to wake up. This is all part of trying to destroy America. I'm serious. We have a president who's trying to bring back that ethos that we have, that we had. He's trying to restore the American pride, which we lost. During Barack Obama, it was as if he wanted us to be a second-rate country, to take a back seat. That shouldn't be the case. We can still be in front and be proud of leading the world and helping those out behind us. That's what we've done our whole existence. Well, for most of our existence. I mean, case in point, both world wars, they were won because we stepped in. We helped out. It's disgusting that the media wants to bash a man for campaign finance violations, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things, has nothing to do with Russia collusion, and he has done so many good things for this country so far. He's bettering relations with China. I know I went on a rant with China, but China just agreed to buy 1.3 to 2.1 million metric tons, I believe, of soybeans from an article on Bloomberg that reported it. I understand it is just a drop in the bucket to the surplus that has been created due to the trade war, but it's a start. It's a start, and it shows that they're conceding to President Trump's demands. Our economy is flourishing. I'm not giving all the credit to President Trump. I do think that he has a lot to do with it. I don't think that he deserves all the credit. He definitely deserves some credit. There's no denying that. By the regulations he has cut, by the tax cuts in general, have helped out middle-class America and the 1%ers, the lower income, everybody. He just, if I'm not mistaken, did an executive order or passed a bill to allocate more resources to lower community areas to try and cut taxes, cut some regulations back so that way businesses or have more of an incentive to go into impoverished neighborhoods. And the founder of BET actually came out and praised him for this, and he was a Hillary Clinton supporter. I mean, come on. This man is doing a lot of good, and we don't want to give him any credit for it. And we're talking about campaign finance violations. This should ring bells in everybody's minds that, okay, they're playing us for fools. This was a Hillary Clinton conspiracy. That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. Now, his wife, the First Lady, has actually called out the mainstream media on their behavior in an interview she had yesterday with Sean Hannity, in which she called book writers, journalists, comedians, performers, opportunists to try and make a buck on her and her family's, at her and her family's expense. She's 100% right. There's so many people who've come out of the woodworks that we have never, ever heard of, and they've became instantaneously popular because they bash President Trump. They have something bad to say. Anybody that has anything bad to say about President Trump is instantly popular. Have you not noticed that? Anybody that has anything positive to say about him is demonized right away. That's why there are so many people who don't talk about being a Trump supporter. I mean, take this example. There is a 11-year-old boy. I don't remember the state, but he has a last name of Trump. He has had to switch schools, and he has said that he hates himself. He hates his last name. He wants to change his last name because kids at school are calling him an idiot and picking on him because his last name is Trump. That's just sick. And that just shows that we're not living in a healthy time when it comes to political disputes. Not saying that they've ever been perfect, because they haven't, but right now I think they're reaching an all-time high. They're picking on somebody for having the last name of a president, and he's an 11-year-old kid. An 11-year-old kid. And there are other kids doing this to them. You know why? Probably because mommy and daddy are activists and left-wingers who just have nothing but negative things to say about President Trump because they're brainwashed by the mainstream media. And that's all they watch. And you know what? I can't really dog them for that. It is the mainstream media's fault for this. I don't dog the people who watch it. You know why I don't? It's a lot to stay up to date with the news. It is, especially with how much information is presented. I mean, do we remember the guy who was found to set bombs to 12 prominent Democrats? I mean, we kind of forgot about that. Nobody talks about that. Where's that trial gone? I don't know. There's so much that's happening, is my point, that it's hard to keep up with it. And for those who aren't passionate about it, who don't really have the time to keep up with it and just want to know what's going on in the world, they turn on Fox News, CNN, read quick snippets through Twitter, Facebook, however they consume the information. They just go off of headlines or short summaries of the day, and in those headlines and summaries are so misleading and so clickbaitish that it's dishonest. And it gives them a distorted view of the world to the point where their kids hear it and take their politics to school with them and make fun of a boy for having the same name as our president and calling him an idiot to the point where he wants to change his last name. That's just one example of what Melania Trump, the First Lady, is talking about. Now, I realize that Michelle Obama was criticized a lot as the First Lady, especially the hurtful things they alleged, right-wingers alleged, against her being a man, about their children not actually being their children, being adopted. I mean, these are just disgusting things. Just disgusting. We shouldn't be bringing up the family in these instances. I don't think we should. They have nothing to do with the policy he's promoting. Obviously, the First Lady has some persuasion when it comes to certain policies, I'm sure, and certain decisions the president makes. I'm sure she has a role in his decision. I'm sure all First Ladies did. So I get that she may support some things that other people don't like. I get that. But to deny that she has been treated cruelly by the media is wrong. And it's just wrong. I mean, lying's wrong. There's no two ways about it. So that's the news for today. I hope you all enjoyed it. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Peace.